Okay. Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to see glycemic index and energy assessment. So in that today we are going to see the glycemic index. Glycemic index is nothing but a assessment of nutritive value of carbohydrates. Glycemic index is more concerned with the blood glucose levels. And we are going to see the effects of taking food with high glycemic index and effects of taking low glycemic index foods. And we are going to see the examples for high and low glycemic index foods. And energy generation, the second part of the class is energy generation and energy utilization of the body and energy calculation in different foods. So these are we are going to see today. So coming to glycemic index, we know glycemic index is a scale to measure the nutritive value of carbohydrates. And it is the ratio comparing the rise in blood glucose level due to test meal and a reference meal. So here you have to remember that if we take any substance, it will rise the blood glucose levels. So if you take the glucose or any reference meal, it will rise the blood glucose levels. And if we take any other substance, it will also rise the blood glucose levels. We will compare the both rise in the levels and we will see the ratio that is known as glycemic index. So this reference meal is always glucose, mostly it will be glucose. And the other substance that we take as the test meal, so the rise in levels with the test meal and the rise in levels with the reference meal or compared. The ratio is known as glycemic index. And we know why there is rise in blood glucose level. The blood glucose level is raised when you take a food due to digestion and absorption. We had already seen in the previous sessions. So digestion, we know the most part of the digestion of carbohydrates takes place in the small intestine, by which the carbohydrates are converted to glucose, galactose and fructose, mostly glucose. And after this digestion, the glucose is absorbed from lumen of the intestine to the capillaries. So when the glucose enters the capillaries, it will enter the main bloodstream and results in rise of blood glucose levels. So glycemic index indicates how rapidly a carbohydrate is digested and released as glucose into the bloodstream. That means how rapidly a carbohydrate is digested and absorbed. That indicates the glycemic index indicates the digestion and absorption. So we all know glucose, if we give the reference food glucose, it will directly enter into the bloodstream with the less process in the digestion and absorption. So that's why the glycemic index of reference food is always high, and that is compared with the any other substance, which will be definitely in most of the cases it will be lower than the glycemic index of the reference food, that is glucose. Okay. So glycemic index indicates rapidity or how rapidly it is digested and absorbed. And coming to assessing the glycemic index, we will follow a protocol in which first we will give 50 grams of carbohydrate as the test meal to the person. After that, we will take the blood samples for every 15 minutes in the first hour, for every 30 minutes in the second hour, and every 30 minutes in the third hour. So all these samples, that means 4 plus 2 plus 2, 8 samples are taken, and the 8 samples, the blood glucose levels are assessed in these samples. And all the samples are plotted in a graph. The y-axis being the values of the blood glucose levels and the x-axis being the time interval. We'll plot a graph. And this graph is compared with the graph of the reference food. And this is done averagely in 8 to 10 volunteers because the individual digestion and absorption capacity may vary a little bit from individual to individual. So that's why for assessing the glycemic index of a food item, we'll do this, we'll follow the protocol in 8 to 10 individuals and we'll take the average. And we'll draw the graphs. So here you can see the graph of a reference food, and here you can see the graph plotted by the test food. So we'll compare the graph formed by the reference food and the test food. And after that, we'll calculate the glycemic index by using the formula area under blood glucose curve after ingestion of test meal and area under blood glucose curve after ingestion of test glucose, that is reference meal, into 100. Then we'll get the percentage of glycemic index. And we know in most of the cases, the area under blood glucose curve due to test glucose or the reference food will be more, because we are directly giving the glucose, and here we are giving the other carbohydrates. So coming to glycemic index classification, it is classified as high, medium and low. The high glycemic index, the foods which are having high glycemic index, that is greater than 70%, there is a rapid increase in the blood sugar levels. And the food which is having medium glycemic index, there is moderate increase. And the food items which are having low glycemic index, they will be having slow increase in the blood sugar levels. So in this way, depending upon the glycemic index of the food, they are classified into high, medium and low. So we know glycemic index is nothing but the rise in the blood glucose levels. That directly indicates the rise in the blood glucose levels. So high glycemic index will cause rapid increase, and low glycemic index foods when taken will cause slow increase in the blood glucose levels or blood sugar levels. So coming to the graphs, if you clearly see the graphs here, these are the graphs between the glucose levels after taking a food with high glycemic index and after taking a food with low glycemic index. So when the person takes the food with high glycemic index, here you can see there is a rapid rise in the glucose levels in the blood. And the person who had taken low glycemic index food, there is slow and gradual increase of glucose levels in the blood. Okay. So the rapid increase is due to rapid digestion and rapid absorption, and the slow increase is due to slower digestion and slower absorption. So here you have to remember one thing. The important thing here is the food which is having the high glycemic index or the food which is having the low glycemic index, they will be completely digested and absorbed. But the difference here is the food with high glycemic index, it will be rapidly digested and absorbed, and the food with low glycemic index, it will be slowly digested and absorbed. But in both cases, the food will be completely digested and absorbed. So that is the important thing that you have to remember. And one more thing is, the food with low glycemic index is good for health in the clinical practice. So the food with low glycemic index is good for health. And why some food are having high glycemic index and some foods are having low glycemic index? There is no change in the digestion absorption factor, because the person will be having same digestion and absorption capacity. Then why there is change in glycemic index values in different food items? The change is due to the factors which are present in the food itself. Due to certain factors in the food items, the glycemic index is changing. So that the meaning of that is, some factors in the food are causing the change in the digestion and absorption of the food in the intestine. So what are those factors we are going to see? Factors influencing glycemic index, or in other words, factors influencing the rise of blood glucose levels. Or in other words, the factors influencing the digestion and absorption of a food substance in the intestines. So all the things are same. So if we see the factors influencing the glycemic index, so the first one is type of starch. So there are different type of starch, amylose, amylopectin. So depending upon this, the digestion and absorption will be varying. Because amylose and amylopectin, there is difference in the absorption of water, depending upon which the digestion and absorption changes, and depending upon which the glycemic index changes. And the next is physical entrapment. In some food items, they are present in the form of layers. So outer layer can act as barrier and can slow down the digestion and absorption by varying the glycemic index. The next is type of fiber. There are soluble and insoluble fibers. If soluble fibers are present, they will form a gel-like layer which delays the digestion and absorption. So in some foods, there may be insoluble fibers. Then they will be digested and absorbed easily. Next is the nutrient composition. So along with carbohydrates, there may be fats and carbohydrates, fats and proteins. So if more fats and proteins are present, there will be delayed gastric emptying. So in that case, there will be difference in the digestion and absorption of the food. Similarly, in case of food processing, there will be breakdown of the food material. So it makes the digestion easy. So there will be easier digestion and absorption. Similarly, in case of cooking, there will be easily exposed. There will be swelling of the food material, and they will be easily exposed to the digestive enzymes, and they are digested easily and absorbed easily. And this results in the varying of the glycemic index. We know the food which is digested and absorbed easily, the glycemic index will be more, because after digestion and absorption, the glucose levels will be increased in the blood. So glycemic index will be more. And the food substances in which there is digestion and absorption is slow, the glycemic index is also low, because the increase in the blood glucose levels is slower. So coming to the first one, type of starch, we know there are different types, amylose and amylopectin. Amylose is a straight chain and amylopectin is a branched chain. Amylose will be absorbing a less amount of water, so it forms tight clumps. So slow digestion, slow absorption, and slow increase in levels of glucose in the blood, and there is low glycemic index. So the example is kidney beans, which will be having more amylose, which will be having lower glycemic index. And some food materials, some food will containing more of amylopectin. This amylopectin will absorb more water, is digested easily, absorbed easily, and the blood glucose levels will be raised rapidly. So that means it is having high glycemic index. Example. So coming to physical entrapment. So the bran is the best example. So bran acts as physical barrier or screen and protects and slows down the digestion by acting as screening to the enzymes, digestive enzymes. So that's why the digestion is slow and absorption is slow, and the glycemic index is low when there is bran. And if there is no physical entrapment, then the digestion absorption are fast, rapid, and the glycemic index will be higher. And coming to the next one, type of fiber, the fibers will be soluble and insoluble fibers. If the soluble fibers are present in the food item, it will combine with the intestinal contents, and it will transform the intestinal contents into a gel-like material. And this gel will be present around the food material, which slows down the digestion by slowing down the enzymatic activity of the food item. So that's why the digestion is slowed down, the absorption is slow, and the glycemic index will be low. So this happens in case of apple. So apple, there will be more of soluble fibers. So that's why the digestion and absorption are slow, and glycemic index is low. So that's why it is good for health. And next is the nutritional composition. If fats and proteins are more in the food item, then it will slow down the gastric emptying. So when gastric emptying is slowed down, then it can't enter the intestines rapidly, and there is slow digestion and slow absorption, and so slow increase of the blood glucose levels. So that's why lower glycemic index. Because if emptying is after gastric emptying only, the major part of the digestion starts, and after that only absorption takes place. If more amount of fat and protein are there in the food, it will slow down the gastric emptying, which leads to slow digestion and slow absorption, resulting in the low glycemic index. That is slow increase in the blood glucose levels. And coming to the food processing, we know food processing, there are different processes: germination, soaking, fermentation. So there will be breakdown of the food material. So some part of the digestion will be completed by food processing only. So in this case, the food will be digested and absorbed easily, and the glucose levels will be increased. Okay, so this leads to high glycemic index. So the processed foods will be having high glycemic index because of easy digestion and absorption. Similarly, coming to the cooking swells the food items and softens the food items, which results in easy exposure to the digestive enzymes, which results in easy digestion and absorption. Then rapid rise in the blood glucose levels, which leads to high glycemic index. So the cooked foods will be having high glycemic index because of swelling. Because of swelling, there will be easy digestion and absorption. So that's why the cooked food will be having higher level of glycemic index. So boiling, steaming, roasting, baking, all these are the methods of cooking. High glycemic index. So coming to high glycemic index. So we know why high glycemic index is present in some food items. So just to remember, so the type of starch, if the type of starch is amylopectin, then there will be amylose, then there will be the digestion will be slow, it leads to high glycemic index. Similarly, if there is no physical entrapment, then there will be fast digestion and there will be high glycemic index. Similarly, type of fiber. If there is insoluble fiber, it leads to fast digestion, absorption, and high level of glycemic index. Similarly, nutrient composition. If there are low levels of fat and protein, it leads to fast gastric emptying and rapid digestion and absorption, and the glycemic index will be high. Similarly, food processing and food cooking leads to easy digestion, easy absorption, leading to high glycemic index. So high glycemic index, if a person takes the food with high glycemic index that is greater than 70%, there will be rapid digestion, rapid absorption, which leads to higher and faster rise of blood glucose levels. So this leads to repeated spikes of blood glucose. So if there is repeated spikes of blood glucose, it leads to different effects. So these are the effects of taking the food with high glycemic index. So the first one is risk of diabetes. In a healthy individual, there will be risk of diabetes, and in already diabetic patients, the complications will be increasing by taking the food with high glycemic index, and there will be repeat abnormality and the cardiovascular diseases. There will be risk of cardiovascular diseases. So why there is risk of diabetes in healthy individuals by taking high glycemic index foods? So we know the normal mechanism, how the glucose enters the body. The insulin will be produced, which is attached to the insulin receptors on the membrane, and due to which there will be conformational changes, and the glucose will be entering into the cells by glucose 4 transporters. So this is the normal mechanism. If the person takes more and more high glycemic index food, then there will be repeated spikes of blood glucose levels. So when there is repeated spike of blood glucose levels, the insulin and glucose 4 transporters can't manage the uptake of glucose efficiently. So if this happens continuously, it may lead to the risk of diabetes in a healthy individual. And the complications in type 1 diabetes. We know in type 1 diabetes, the defect in the type 1 diabetes is insulin deficiency. So there is no insulin. So there is no attachment of insulin to the insulin receptors. So no membrane changes and no opening of the glucose 4 transporter, and there is no glucose uptake. So glucose will be accumulated in the blood. If this patient takes the glycemic index, high glycemic index food, then what happens is the glucose levels will be increasing more and more in the blood, which leads to a lot of complications. Similarly, in type 2 diabetic patients, we know the defect, the insulin is produced normally, it is attached to the receptors, but the glucose 4 transporters won't be opened and the glucose levels will be increased in the blood. This is the defect in the type 2 diabetes, which is known as insulin resistance. So when the patient takes the food with high glycemic index, the glucose is already accumulated, and this food will accumulate more and more glucose, which leads to a lot of complications. And coming to lipid abnormality, when there is disturbance in the glucose levels in the blood, it disturbs the normal lipid metabolism, which leads to increased cholesterol in the peripheral tissues. And coming to cardiovascular diseases, when there is disturbance in the carbohydrate metabolism and lipid metabolism, we know there will be atherosclerotic changes in the vessel wall, due to which there will be formation of clots, and there will be blockage of blood supply to the heart and brain, which leads to myocardial infarction and stroke. So all these are the effects of high glycemic index. So that's why high glycemic index, the food items with a high glycemic index are not preferred in healthy individuals or in diseased patients. In the healthy individuals or in the patients, it is always better to avoid the foods with high glycemic index. Then coming to low glycemic index, we had already seen. So the type of, it depends on the type of starch and physical entrapment. If there is any barrier, the digestion absorption will be low and the patient will be, the food will be having low glycemic index. And coming to type of fiber, if soluble fibers are present, they will form a gel, slow digestion, slow absorption, and low glycemic index. Coming to nutrient composition, if the fat and carbohydrate, if the fat and protein content is more, then the gastric emptying will be there and the glycemic index will be decreased. Similarly, the food processing and cooking anyway, they will increase the glycemic index. So what are the effects of low glycemic index? We had seen the effects of high glycemic index. Now we are going to see the effects of low glycemic index. So low glycemic index, if the person takes a food with low glycemic index, that is less than 55%, the digestion is slow, the absorption is slow, and this causes lower and slower rise of blood glucose levels. So this lower and slower rise in blood glucose levels are having positive effects. That is, there is very less number of sudden spikes of blood glucose level. So this is very beneficial to the healthy individual and even in the diabetic patients. And this slower rise of blood glucose levels is good for the maintaining the lipid metabolism. So the cholesterol levels will be decreased and HDL levels will be maintained. And sustained supply of glucose to the brain. So this slower rise of blood glucose levels will continuously lead to slower rise of glucose levels continuously for more time. So this will result in sustained supply of glucose to the brain. And apart from that, there will be better absorption of the other nutrients due to slower rise of the blood glucose levels. That means the slower rise is due to slower absorption and slower digestion. This happens when the person takes the food with low glycemic index. So there are many beneficial effects with this low glycemic index diet. So coming to the short-term benefits, decrease hunger, decrease mood swings, decrease fatigue, and they also assist in weight loss. And coming to the long-term benefit, they decrease the risk of diabetes in the healthy individuals, decrease the blood glucose levels in diabetic patients, improves the body's sensitivity to insulin, which is very helpful in the type 2 diabetic patients, and increased HDL cholesterol and maintaining the lipid metabolism, and decreased C-reactive protein inflammation, and decrease the risk of hypertension and cardiac diseases. So all these are the long-term benefits of food with low glycemic index. So many studies have been done and confirmed that low glycemic index foods will be having positive effect. Okay? They decrease the risk of diabetes in the healthy individuals, and they decrease the blood sugar levels in the diabetic patients by slowing down the digestion and absorption process, and by slowing down the rise of glucose levels in the blood. Slowly they will rise the blood glucose levels, and slowly the levels will come to the normal, unlike the food with high glycemic index. And they improve the lipid metabolism. They improve the lipid levels by decreasing the cholesterol levels in the peripheral tissues and increasing the good cholesterol, that is HDL cholesterol. And they will help in maintaining the weight control by releasing the energy slowly, by increasing the glucose levels slowly in the blood. They will help in maintaining the weight. And we know they will, by maintaining the lipid and carbohydrate metabolism, they will decrease the risk of the other cardiovascular diseases. So all these have been proven by different studies that the food with low glycemic diet is good for health. So the conclusion about this is eating too much high glycemic index foods causes repeated spikes in the blood glucose levels. So we had already seen the effects of these spikes. So this leads to increased risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and obesity. The only advantage of high glycemic index food is it refuels the glucose reserve immediately after exercise. That is a very simple advantage and very minute advantage. But the only advantage that we can speak about glycemic index, high glycemic index, is it will refuel the glucose levels in the blood immediately. It will maintain the glucose reserve. It will refuel the glucose reserve immediately after exercise, after severe exercise. And eating low glycemic index foods help to control blood glucose levels in diabetic patients, and it also helps in maintaining the weight loss effects or maintaining the weight. So coming to the overall conclusion, do not focus exclusively on achieving low glycemic index by taking low glycemic index foods. This may lead to high fat and low carbohydrates, which will be having, there won't be balance in the metabolism. If this happens, there won't be balance in the carbohydrate and lipid metabolism. So instead, it is better to plan a balanced diet which includes most of the low glycemic index foods. So taking completely low glycemic index foods may affect the balanced diet. So that's why it is always preferable to take a balanced diet which includes most of the food which is having low glycemic index. So glycemic index, in calculating the glycemic index, we are not taking the amount of carbohydrate into the account. But there is another measure, the glycemic load, in which we are taking the amount of carbohydrate also. So glycemic load is generally considered as better parameter for assessing the nutritive value of carbohydrates than glycemic index. But nowadays, both glycemic index and glycemic load both are combinedly measuring to see the nutritive value of carbohydrates. So these are the foods which are having high and low glycemic index or glycemic load. You can see regularly using food items. And these are food items, different fruits, vegetables, and how the glycemic index is varying. This has been given in ascending order. And this is also a glycemic index chart with different fruits and vegetables. And this is the glycemic index of different foods which are commonly taken. So whenever you see a chart, you have to see which of them are having the high glycemic index. So if you observe any chart, you have to observe the high levels and low levels. You can't remember completely the chart. You have to see the high levels and low levels. So here you can see the carrot is having the high glycemic index, and the cornflakes are having the high glycemic index, and the white rice is having high glycemic index. So they are not good for diabetic patients. Similarly, the foods that are having very low glycemic index are these peanuts, soya beans, and milk. These are having low glycemic index. So they are good for normal individuals and also diabetic patients. So in this way, you have to study any chart. So the food should contain balancedly the high and low glycemic index food items, which will balance the diet. So depending upon the high and low glycemic index and glycemic low, we have to plan the balanced diet. So we had finished a part of class, the glycemic index. So glycemic index is nothing but the rise of blood glucose levels. It is the indicator for nutritive value of carbohydrates, and glycemic index is calculated depending upon the rise of blood glucose levels. So glycemic index of food item is calculated depending upon the digestion, absorption, and rise of blood glucose level. And depending upon some factors which are present in the food item, the glycemic index is varying in the particular food substances. So the factors we had seen, and we had seen what is the high glycemic index and what is the low glycemic index. Rapid increase in the blood glucose levels by taking a food item is high glycemic index, and slow increase in the glucose levels in the blood by taking some certain foods is low glycemic index. And we had seen the effects of high glycemic index foods and low glycemic index foods on the body. So all this we had seen, and in the conclusion we had seen that we have to take a balanced diet which contains more of the low glycemic index and all other food substances which will balance the requirements of our body. That is balanced diet. So coming to the second part of the class, calculation of energy in the food. So why it is necessary to calculate the energy in the food? So to maintain good health and to maintain good weight, there should be a balance in the energy intake and energy expenditure in the body. So then only there will be balance in the health, good health. So to know the energy intake, we have to calculate the energy in different food substances. So that's why the energy calculation is important in the food. Then only we can know how much energy we are taking in and how much energy is being utilized. And before going to the calculation of energy, we have to know the energy derivation and energy utilization in the body. So how we are getting energy? We are getting the energy by taking carbohydrates, fats and proteins which are digested, absorbed, and we are getting the energy. We are getting these carbohydrates, fats and proteins from the food that we take in the diet. And we know these carbohydrates are digested to glucose, and this glucose by glycolysis gives the energy. And fats are digested to fatty acids, and these fatty acids by beta oxidation giving us the energy. And these proteins are digested to amino acids, and these amino acids by gluconeogenesis are giving the energy. So in this way, we are getting energy from the diet, from carbohydrates, fats and proteins by glycolysis, beta oxidation and gluconeogenesis. So this is the energy derivation in the body. So coming to energy utilization. So here you can see some 4 kilocalories from carbohydrates, 4 from proteins and 9 from fats we are getting from the diet. And coming to the energy utilization, the energy is utilized in the body by basal metabolic rate, specific dynamic action and physical activity. So what is this basal metabolic rate? So basal metabolic rate is the minimum energy which is utilized even though we are in rest. So even though we are in rest, some minimum amount of energy is required for the survival of the human being. The minimum amount of energy is required for respiration in the lungs and the blood supply by the heart, reabsorption in the kidneys, and digestion and absorption in the intestines, and the nerve transmission in the brain and nervous system. So for all these, some energy is required. For all these processes, some energy is required even though we are in rest. That energy is known as basal metabolic rate. So this is a way of utilization of energy in the body. And the next one is specific dynamic action. So the specific dynamic action is the energy which is necessary for getting energy from the other food substance. Suppose we are taking a protein. So to get energy from the protein, for the digestion and absorption of the protein, some amount of energy is required from the body. So that energy is known as specific dynamic action. So if suppose 100 calories of energy we are getting from a protein, so 100 grams of protein, 100 calories of protein and 30 calories of energy may be required which we are getting from the body. So this is another way of utilization of energy in the body. And apart from that, physical activity in the daily needs, in our movements, some energy is required. That also we are getting from the body, and that is also a way of utilization of energy. So in this way, the energy is utilized in the body. So if you go into a little bit details, so this is the percentage of basal metabolic rate, physical activity, and specific dynamic action, which is also known as thermogenesis. So basal metabolic rate is the minimum amount of energy required by the body to maintain life at complete physical and mental rest. And we know why this energy is required: for heart pumping, for digestion, for reabsorption in kidneys, for respiration in lungs, and for neural transmission. For all these, this minimum energy is required. And this BMR is measured in Bennedict and Roth apparatus, and the units are calories per meter square per hour. So these are different ways of utilization of basal energy in basal metabolic rate. Coming to significance of basal metabolic rate, it is used for planning balanced diet. So balanced diet should be involve not only the energy expenditure by physical activity, it should also involve the energy which is required for BMR and also for the specific dynamic action. And in assessment of thyroid function also, it is required because thyroid hormones also affect the metabolism and basal metabolic rate. Coming to specific dynamic action, extra heat production. We know this is the extra energy required for getting energy from any food item. And this extra energy is released in the form of extra heat. So that's why extra heat production of the body above the calculated caloric value when a food is metabolized by the body. And in simple words to understand, we can tell that if suppose 100 calories we are getting from a protein, then some amount of heat is released. But apart from that heat, the extra heat is also released by the utilization of some energy from the body reserves. So this is also known as calorigenic or thermogenic action. So this is the graph indicating specific dynamic action. So this is the extra energy required for getting energy from a food substance. So this is the example for understanding. 25 grams will get 100 grams, and for this 30 calories are required for as SDA from the energy reserve of the body. And for different nutrients, for proteins it is 30%, for carbohydrates it is 5%, and fats it is 30%, the SDA for different nutrients. So that's why proteins are good for health. The one thing is, when we take proteins, they will not increase the glucose levels immediately. That is the first advantage. And another thing is, for the utilization of protein, the protein utilizes the energy from the body reserves. So in that way, some energy is consumed. So that's why protein is considered as good nutrient. And significance of SDA, it is utilization for body consumes some energy, and it is highest for the protein. And we know the different ways why the utilization of energy. And also SDA is required for assessing the body mass, assessing the balanced diet. So we had seen the derivation and utilization of energy in the body. The derivation mainly by the diet, and the utilization is mainly by the basal metabolic rate, specific dynamic action, and physical activity. So coming to the calculation of energy. To calculate energy, we should have the access the number of grams, access to the number of grams of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats present in a particular food item. So to calculate the energy, first we should be knowing the grams of carbohydrate, the grams of protein, and the grams of fat present in that food. And we will multiply that grams with 4 in case of carbohydrates, 4 in case of proteins, and 9 in case of fats. And we'll add all the results. So the grams into 4, grams of carbohydrates into 4, grams of proteins into 4, and grams of fats into 9. Then we'll add all those results to get the complete energy or complete kilocalories present in the food item. So if we see this in the stepwise, so step 1 is assess the exact grams of carbohydrate, protein, and fats present in the given food. And the step 2 is multiply grams of carbohydrate in the food by 4 calories per gram, or grams into 4, because all the carbohydrates will be having 4 calories in 1 gram. So step 2 is multiply the grams of protein present in the food into 4 with 4. So grams into 4, because all the proteins, if we take on an average, they will contain 4 calories per gram. And the step 4 is multiply grams of fat into 9, because all the fats on an average will release 9 calories per gram. And remember one important thing, in the human body, the calories are equal to kilocalories, because here the term calories we are using for kilocalories. So for kilocalories or calories, we are using the same term in calculation of energy in the human beings. And coming to the next step, Now we had multiplied and we got the individual energy, and we will total all the calories to get the total energy in the complete food. And after that, step 6, we can calculate the percentage of energy contributed by each nutrient. Okay, so in energy calculation, first we'll calculate, we'll assess the amount of carbohydrate, proteins and fats in grams. Next we'll multiply with 4 in carbohydrates, 4 in proteins and 9 in the fats. And after that we'll get the individual values. Then we'll add all the energy values to get the final energy value in the food item. And after that we'll also calculate the percentage of energy contributed by each individual nutrient. That is percentage of energy contributed by carbohydrates, percentage of energy contributed by proteins, and percentage of energy contributed by fats. For example, so for understanding I'm telling, a slice of bread contains, with a teaspoon of butter, contains 16 grams of carbohydrates, 7 grams of proteins, and 9 grams of fat. Then what we will do? Then 16 grams is multiplied by 4, we will get 64 kilocalories, and the 7 grams of protein is multiplied by 4, we will get 28 kilocalories, and 9 grams of fat is multiplied by 9, we will get 81 kilocalories. So the total energy present in this food, that is the slice of bread, is 173 kilocalories. And we'll calculate the percentage of energy contributed by each individual. For example, energy from fats is 81 kilocalories in the above case. In the above slice of bread, we had seen the energy from fats is 81 kilocalories. And the total energy in the food is 173 kilocalories. So if we see the percentage of fats, 81 divided by 173 into 100, we get 47%. That means in this food item, the fats is contributing 47% of the energy. So individual calculation of individual energy is important. Calculation of total energy is important, and calculation of the contribution by individual nutrient is also important to get the complete idea of a food item. So when we get the complete idea about the energy in a food item, then only we can plan a balanced diet. So to plan a balanced diet, we should have a complete idea about the energy in a food. To get the complete idea of the energy in a food, we have to estimate the energy of individual components, total energy, and energy contribution percentage of the individual unit. So this is important for energy calculation. Because this is important because the health recommendations suggest that people should limit the intake to 30% of total. So the 30% of calories they should get from the fat from the total intake. So that is suggested by the health recommendations. So that means the total energy supply by a food item or the total energy intake, in that 30% should be, the less than 30% should be from the fats. That will be good for health. But in the above case, you can see there is 47%. So that's why that is not good for health. The percentage contribution of the fat should be less than 30%. Then only it is good for health. So that's why it is also important to to calculate the percentage contribution by the individual nutrients. And coming to the conclusion, to calculate energy, there should be access to the information about the masses of different nutrients. That means we should know the grams of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats to calculate the energy in any food item. Then only we can calculate the exact amount, exact energy in kilocalories in any food item. Eating less calories results in weight loss, and more calories results in weight gain. And eating the exact number of calories results in the balanced diet, which results in the maintaining the weight. So this calories information, we are talking about calories, and this calories information is available on the nutritional label, which is present on different food items, which are provided by the government, which are accepted by the government, and that provides the nutrition information of the food. This nutritional label, which is present on all the food items, all the covering of the food items, will provide the nutritional information. So here you can see on some nutritional label, there will be grams of protein, grams of carbohydrates, and grams of fat, and they will give the calorific value of the individual components. And in some nutritional labels, there will be directly calculated energy will be there. And in some nutritional labels, he will give in the servings. Suppose there are 3 servings in the food item, in the food package. Then each item, he will give the nutritional value of the each serving, so that we can assess and we can use the product. So here also, in this nutritional label also, you can see he had given the energy in kilojoules and also in the kilocalories for 100 ml and also in the 250 ml. And he had also given the protein content and carbohydrate content in 100 ml and 250 ml. This is also another nutritional label which contains the energy content and the amount of the individual nutrients. So food calorimeter. So we had seen the energy calculation. So this food calorimeter is used for calculation of energy. So this is designed to measure the energy, calories per gram in the food. So in this, what is done is a piece of food item is taken and it is burned. When it is burned, some energy is released. So this energy is used for heating the known quantity of water. So to estimate the energy, what is done, the principle of the calorimeter is a piece of food is burned and the energy is released from this burning, and this heat is used for heating a known quantity of water. When the water is heated, then there will be temperature change. There will be increase in the temperature in the water, and this will determine the amount of energy. So the rise in temperature of the water is directly proportional to the heat released, and the heat released is directly proportional to the energy released by the burning the piece of food. So this is the principle of food calorimeter, not calorimeter. It is calorimeter because it is estimating the calories in the food. So after getting, we will estimate by the formula 4.2 into the mass of water into rise of temperature divided by 1000 gives the calories present in the food. Okay. So this is the calorimeter. Here you can see, here the food item is placed and here electric supply is given and this food item is burnt. When this food item is burnt, heat is released. That heat leads to heating this water, the known quantity of water. And there will be temperature rise in this water. And this temperature rise can be observed by us by the thermometer. So this temperature rise indicates the heat produced, and this heat produced by the burning indicates the energy present in the food substance. So this is the principle of calorimeter. So this is another picture of calorimeter where you can see the different parts. So this is for understanding. So Different foods like peanuts in different amounts will lead to different rise of temperature. Peanuts, the amount is different and rise of temperature. Similarly, the cashew nuts, if the amount is different, the rise of temperature is different. And almonds, the rise of temperature is different. It depends on the energy present in the food substance. If more energy is present, after burning, it will release more energy, more heat, due to which more heat is produced, due to which the water is heated and the temperature will be increased. More rise of temperature will be there. So this rise of temperature is recorded and a graph is drawn. Similarly, the rise of temperature with cashew nuts is also recorded. And the graph is drawn. And the rise of temperature with the almonds is recorded. And the graph is drawn. And by this graph, we can assess the energy present in the individual food. The temperature rise can be assessed depending upon which the heat produced is assessed, depending upon which the energy present in the food item can be estimated. So coming to energy balance, from morning to evening, from breakfast to sleep, there is a number of situations in which there is energy expenditure and energy intake. Okay. So here you can see in this picture, the pink colored are energy intake and the green colored are energy expenditure. So there are a number of energy expenditure and energy intake in the overall day, and we have to maintain the balance between this energy intake and energy output. Then only the health will be maintained. So there should be energy balance, the intake and expenditure. We know intake is by taking the diet, carbohydrates, fats and proteins, and energy expenditure is by basal metabolic rate and HDA and physical activity. So there should be a balance. So to know this balance, we have to know the intake, energy intake. So to know the energy intake, we have to calculate the energy. So this is a normal balanced diet for a 70 kgs man. There should be 300 kilocalories per day. Okay. And coming to the conclusion, we know the all thing we are doing is to maintain good health. To maintain good health, we have to take a balanced diet. So to take a balanced diet, we have to know the amount of energy present in the food. We have to know how much energy we are taking, intake of energy. So that's why we have to calculate the energy in the food, and to get good health effects, we have to calculate the percentage of contribution by individual components also. So the overall conclusion is different countries, geographical divisions, age group, they will be having different need of calorie intake. So depending upon this, energy intake should be planned. So for this, energy calculation is needed in different food items. Okay. So that's why we'll calculate the energy by using calorie weight. So these are some recent advances regarding the energy calculation and assessing the nutritive value of the carbohydrates. And these are my references, and these are useful websites. And thank you. Hope everyone is clear.